Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Risk Instinct, but of course if you're here you already know that. Now today we're going to be taking a somewhat in-depth look at For Honor. So if you like a game where you'll probably get connected with a full team of bots versus a team of what feels like Super Saiyans, then look no further because I have the game just for you. Now I have a lot of mixed feelings towards this game, because the hype around it was real, but deep in the back of our minds, being Ubisoft, I think we all knew what to expect. So I'm just going to look into covering a few. This isn't going to be a full in-depth look, this is just going to give some people a sort of an idea what to expect if they do decide to purchase the game. Now if you've had the luxury of playing this game already, then you already know the servers are really bad. But that's just Ubisoft. Look at how bad Rainbow was when it launched, and I can't speak from personal experience, but the Division apparently wasn't much better, which is why I said before, deep in the back of our minds, I think we kinda knew what to expect being a Ubisoft game. But I'm going to cover the areas of which I've had experience, because I don't think that it's fair if the game types I talk about aren't the ones I've had experience in myself. So the two key things that I play in are dueling and brawl, or Dominion. Now dueling is where the more skilled players seem to be, and you get to really learn how to use your character, because if you don't, you will die really quickly. And from what I've understood, the armor and stuff that you pick up from scavenging throughout the actual game does not have an effect. It's mostly all cosmetic when it comes to 1v1s, so as not to give an unfair advantage. So if that is true, then luckily they thought of that. So the pros and cons of dueling and brawling are simply that it's a one-on-one and you won't get hit from behind, which is usually what happens in Dominion. Another pro, as I mentioned, was that you get to really learn a feel for your character, or learn other characters that you haven't known. Because let's face it, you can play a bot, but they never move quite like a real character. Most of the maps are really well balanced and confined to a small area, which is good because it means that you don't have to chase the other player around if they decide to play like that. And it has a very environmental aspect to it, in the sense of you can often be pushed into some environmental dangers such as spiked walls, water, or big drops that certainly result in instant death. Now this can be a kind of a really bad thing, which kind of brings me to my next point, which is lag. As we all know, Ubisoft's servers are not that great to begin with, but this seems to be one of the worst in my personal experience. I've had other people say they haven't had trouble, but I've had nothing but trouble since I've been playing it. Not as much in 1v1s, I've got to admit, or dueling and brawling. It's more in the Dominion, where you'll often be poked in a game and 2 or 3 of your teammates will actually end up replaced by bots, and you end up, as I said, versing a team that seems like a bunch of Super Saiyans, because you can never land a hit on them. And you can guarantee if they realise your teammates are all bots, although the bots seem to be less useless than most players at the moment, which is kind of expected because it's a new game and not everybody knows how to play it. But if the other team realises your whole team is bots, you can guarantee that it will become a 3v1 real quick, and you'll be lucky to have an impact in the game at all. As for lag in the 1v1s, as expected it can be quite annoying, especially in a game that's so strategic in the way of blocking and attacking. When the player you're trying to hit is actually teleporting all around the place, and the little red bar you get, which sort of indicates as to where to block from, doesn't come up until about half a second later, or even if you do time it right, it's that slight bit out of sync, as you'd imagine with a bad connection. So it seems to give the advantage to the person with the lower connection here. All in all, from looking at it, it is a pretty strategic game, and to play with friends it's absolutely hilarious, and you can have some really good fun playing it. But then of course there's the other side too, whereas other players will realise you can just spam the one thing, or players will not actually come to help you. Luckily there's a stamina element, so the spamming only works for a certain degree. Once they run out of stamina, you can pretty much have your way with them. As for teammates not helping out, you can bet that's going to happen a lot in Dominion. It starts off as a 4v4 with AI around the map, soldiers that suspiciously look like Sub-Zero and Scorpion, depending which team you're on. But no, being a 4v4, that should mean that the teams are evenly matched and one player should be versing one player at all times. So if you find a spare player wandering around by himself and you don't got anybody on you, there's a good chance that's your player. You should be matching up on him. Unfortunately, other players don't seem to realise this, and they'll often just stand on an objective and wait. Now if I realise I'm free and I don't have anybody playing on me, that usually means that there's a spare player running around 1v2ing one of my teammates with his teammate. So as opposed to standing on the objective and just waiting, or holding the point, I'll actually go and find where he is and try to help my teammate out. Often you don't get there in time. As long as you're making the effort, you might just be able to win and actually revive him. So hopefully later on down the track, people realise not to just stand around with no player on them. Dominion versus dueling and brawling. Now as I mentioned earlier, dueling and brawling seems to be the 1v1 spot. Well, I've had more practice in the 1v1s, but It seems to be where the more skilled players seem to play. They seem to like to leave out all other aspects and just make it a fair one-on-one where you have to fight, mostly based off of skill and strategy. Whereas Dominion, on the other hand, I feel that's more of the casual game type. It's more of anyone can sort of pick it up and do well at it, so long as they push the objectives and actually help their teammates out. Now, suppose we should talk a little bit about the characters. I haven't had a chance to use all the characters yet, but the characters I have used and have fought against, judging by their movement styles, move sets, and the skills and abilities they are able to use, they seem to be much like the characters that are portrayed in Overwatch. Not in the sense of what they look like, not in the sense of the weapons they wield, but in the sense of they're all overpowered in their own little way. Not to the point where anyone can just pick up the controller and become the next MLG player, but in the sense of the right player with the right character can make all the difference on the battlefield, as opposed to if they're using a character they're not so good with, that can completely alter the outcome of the actual game. Of course, that sense more applies to the Dominion, because it's a larger scale, but it can also make a difference in 1v1s, although most of the feats are left out of it. Feats I'll get to in a second. You can get revenge mode, and I've found the quickest way to do it is by parrying or blocking a lot. In 1v1s it seems to be a lot harder to get than what it is in Dominion. Like, if you get backed into a corner, your best bet is surviving in a 1v3 or a 1v2. If it's a 1v3, hit your revenge as soon as you get a chance to, and try to make an escape. But be aware this comes with a cost, because for some unknown reason, if you decide to play as what we'd assume would be a lightly armoured character or a smaller character, you'd assume they'd be much faster. This would make sense, of course, because small usually equals quick. That's not 100% accurate for everything, but that's the base set that comes to mind. But no, don't worry, if you're going to plan on running, make sure you can actually find a way to lose your tail, because if you don't you worry, that big brute behind you wearing 60 kilos of armor will run you down so quick that you won't know what has happened. So yes, that was a little aspect that bugged me about the game. I play as the Orochi most of the time, and it kind of annoys me the fact that some of the larger, much slower characters can actually run you down. Like, there's no reason for them to be any faster than what a smaller character is that looks much lighter armor. So that's something that I would like to see a little later in the game. I'm not expecting for the Orochi or anything like that just because I used them or anything to be ridiculously fast as far as attack speed wise, but as far as movement speed goes in running, they should be able to outrun someone wearing 60 plus kg of what I'd assume would be metal armor. So moving on to the feats. Now with the feats, they're sort of like, I guess you could say, an ability that you unlock while doing well enough in the game. The better you do in more objectives than that you capture, more soldiers you put down, and more jewels you win, I guess you could say. While in the Dominion, you seem to unlock them a lot quicker by doing that, of course, and these usually come from a passive ability. Speaking from the Orochi, you can get a throwing knife, which starts off as like a smoke bomb that can break the line of sight and allow a good getaway. The other two feats usually consist of, yet again speaking from the Orochi's point of view, you get a longbow which can do a fair amount of damage. I'd say about 3/4 of health damage to an unsuspecting player. Now the last feat usually becomes a bit of a trap. You can place it down somewhere in an area where it's strategically spotted. If your enemy comes through, they have to pretty much cross over it, and which will trigger the trap, and we all know what happens if you trigger a trap. So this can often block off a doorway, giving you the advantage to know you're not going to get hit from behind, which is always nice because let's face it, no one likes to get hit from behind while they're having that epic duel revenge mode. Now this is sort of something that I'm torn between, because as far as a strategic game goes, or more of a skill based, the revenge mode isn't really something that I think should be in 1v1s. Like in the 1v1 aspect, I should say it shouldn't be in the 1v1s, because it can completely alter it. I guess you can use that as a strategic thing, but to me it feels like a really cheesy way to win it. Of course I'm going to use it if it's there, but the point is it feels really cheesy to be getting absolutely dominated. Time it perfectly, because if you time your revenge mode as they're about to hit, it'll actually knock them over and usually give you the chance to finish them off really quick. As far as in the Dominion wise goes, I guess yes, it should be there. If I'd have heard about it before I played the game, I probably would have said no. But after playing the game and realising how often it usually becomes a 1v2 or 1v3, just using it, and half the time it doesn't save you anyway, but it gives you that little more chance of getting away or actually being able to defend yourself long enough for a teammate to come to your aid if they actually choose to do so. As far as the 1v1 mode goes, no, I don't think it should be there, but as far as Dominion goes, for the teaming aspect or the chance of survival, yes, I do believe it should be there, because half the time it doesn't play that big an impact anyway. You still usually end up getting stabbed in the back by that sneaky peacekeeper that's running around. So I guess this is the aspect. I'm not going to tell you whether you should or shouldn't buy it. I'm just going to say, like, I'm not going to force it down your throat and say, no, you definitely should not buy it. I'm just going to say my opinion and my thoughts on it before and after I bought the game. Now, before I bought the game, as soon as I found out Ubisoft was involved, I sort of expected the servers to be really, really bad. But you know, your experience might be a little bit different. Like I said, I've had people say to me they've had no trouble, but I've had lots of games where people are being kicked, myself included, repeatedly. When I first got the game, I guess the servers would be pretty heavy loaded right now with it being such a new game. Like, I actually had to go free shops to get it because it was sold out, which was kind of amazing, to be honest. So I guess, yes, you can look and say the servers are a little bit overloaded. So from that aspect, I guess, me personally now, knowing what I know, I wouldn't buy it now. If you've got a friend or a family member that has it and they're willing to keep it until later on, just see if the servers settle down and see how it becomes then, if you know they've had trouble with being kicked or seeing a lot of teammates removed from games. As far as the gameplay aspect of it goes, it's actually really, really impressive. With good connection, this can feel extremely strategic when you're not against that one guy that just spams the same continuous move. But if you use your brain, you can pretty much disperse of him really, really quickly, because we all know that spammers don't like to change direction of their attack, and in this game that can be a really fatal error. As far as the armor side of things goes, you can get stuff and upgrade it that seems to be, it affects like your performance and armor rating, but doesn't seem to have that big of an impact on the game within the 4v4s. And as far as 1v1s go, as far as I've heard, apparently they don't actually have an effect on the 1v1s because they wanted to keep that skill based. If not, as I said, it doesn't make a difference really that much anyway, because I've played against people that had much, much better armor, and still if they've been on my team, they've been carried, not always by me, and if they're on the other team, they're often not that great. Like, just because you have the best armor and that in the game doesn't seem to make you much better, is what I'm trying to say. Now, there is emblem customization and that in the game, which you can do a fair bit with. I'm not going to go into it, otherwise this video is going to be stretched out way too long. There's a few other cool features. Of course, you can link it with your Ubisoft account and get all the rewards, which is always nice. Now, as far as I know, there is microtransactions, unfortunately, within the game, which allows you to open, I guess you could say, sort of like loot crate things, but a lot of people have been saying, and I've sort of listened to this myself, because you don't have to buy them, as in typical fashion of microtransaction, loot drop style things. You don't have to buy them, they're there if you want to, and that pisses a lot of people off when you can buy them, but I guess, you know, it's their money, they can do whatever they damn well want with it. A lot of people just get pissed off how they work hard to get what they get. Other people chuck 20 bucks into the game, they get everything and more. But my point is, you know, there's not much you can do about it, there's no point complaining, it's there, you've got to deal with it, you can get it yourself, you just got to work for it, you can buy it if you choose to, that's all on you. This has been just a little look into For Honor, and I hope if you haven't bought the game, it's sort of give you an idea what to expect. As I said, don't take my word for it if you don't feel confident. If you like the game, then sure, go ahead and get it. But personally, in my opinion, would be if you know someone that's got it, just see if the servers settle down. The game itself, absolutely awesome. However, the server side is the problem, as is with most Ubisoft games. So, this has been my outlook on it. I hope you liked the video, and I shall see you in the next one. Later, guys.